As a man who found himself infatuated with carnage and violence, enough to become one of the most prominent weapons dealers in Japan's underworld, Sojo Genichi holds ideals such as absolute power or the ability to reach out and grab one's desires in the highest of regards. Sojo Genichi rose to greatness as a crime lord not because of luck or being in the right place at the right time, but by believing in his own self-esteem and never wavering from that goal, even if it meant having to kill someone else to get there. An idealistic tendency that would drive Sojo to greatly dislike others that were unable to self-actualize or risk their lives for what they believe. This hatred for people that couldn't commit to their chosen path would always result in apathy from Sojo. The very reason Sojo would torture a low-level employee for running away and not sticking with the mission. And that wasn't because of failure per se, but because that henchman would have the balls to show his face after turning tail and not going down with the ship. The Daruma sorcerer is one of the first assassins to try and kidnap Kar, an innocent girl and member of the Kiyonagi clan, whose superhuman healing properties make her essentially a commodity in the eyes of the country. Thankfully, Chihiro Rokuhira, son of Kunishige Rokuhira, legendary blacksmith of the Enchanted Blades, was there to save the day. However, in addition to the Daruma assassin's loose-lipped confession to Shiba and the cowardly rat Sojo hanged up in his hot spring, the revelation that there is a secret 7th Enchanted Blade is more than enough to remind Sojo that if you want a job done right, you've got to do it yourself. But it was not enough to go after Chihiro and Kar, his primary targets, nor was it enough to take his initial disgust out on the messenger that he used like a decoration on the ceiling. This minuscule failure prompted Sojo to clean up every single loose end to this knot, while also causing as much collateral damage as possible, simply because Sojo felt like it. Upon exposing his former boss and being given a second chance at life, Norasaku Madoka, the former Daruma sorcerer, reaches out to his estranged family to make good on all the shame he's brought to their name. A hesitant but hopeful sister decides she'll take a chance on this quote-unquote new man, willing to repair this broken relationship. And as his sister's vehicle pulls up to the hotel Norasaku was staying at when the Daruma sorcerer declared his death, it was in hopes that there would be a second life just now beginning. Entering the car, though, the only death the Daruma sorcerer meets is his own. But again, for Sojo, just Norasaku wasn't enough. As he opens the vehicle door to his sister's bloodied corpse, that very same blade ends up stabbing through Daruma's stomach next. And even though his sister had nothing to do with the crime, only being guilty of being a loving sibling who regretfully forgave their brother for one last chance, Sojo, with her blood still on his hands, declares it's Norasaku's fault for her death, claiming that he's responsible for wavering and not following through on what Norasaku previously set out to do: kidnap the girl and complete his mission. With one final breath, Norasaku reduces himself back to that wounded criminal who would rather take his opponent out than assess his current situation. And upon exiting the car, Sojo confirms that Norasaku's sister was still alive and only unconscious, at least until Daruma's self-destruction. By enforcing his will on others, Sojo validates his own existence, that selfishness amplified to an absurd degree, all thanks to the enchanted blade Sojo wields. By making use of Kunishige Rokuhira's work, Sojo's able to assert his violent ideals on a much larger scale than he ever was as a mere crime lord. Almost immediately, the man was obsessed with Rokuhira's craftsmanship, believing the sword to be a direct homage to the death and destruction of war, tainting Rokuhira's desires for the enchanted blades to be used for protecting people by explicitly wielding the blade for massacre and nothing else. This philosophy put Sojo directly opposite to Chihiro Rokuhira, Kunishige Rokuhira's son and wielder of the 7th Enchanted Blade Ented. Growing up and being raised by Kunishige, Chihiro knows his father's intentions better than anyone else. Despite Kunishige always trying to instill a sense of accountability in his son, admitting that no matter what reason the blades are used for, they are instruments of death regardless, Chihiro knows that besides his father's black and white words, the enchanted blades can and were at one point always meant to be used to protect the weak. The only problem with that logic, and it's something that Chihiro at this point in the story fails to understand, is that by nature of his father's statement, as weapons capable of bringing about death, that death can be brought about any way the user sees fit. Protecting the weak and defeating evil is only one way, and Sojo represents the antithesis of that. Wielding Kuragumi, the Enchanted Blade Cloud Gouger, Sojo seeks to spread chaos of his own design design as far as the sword will allow him. Just because Chihiro and even Kunoshige, the creator of the sword, disagree with Sojo's beliefs, it does not make Sojo's resolve any less valid. Again, at the end of the day, the enchanted blades are weapons, and weapons are usually only good for killing. Sojo is right about that fact. As long as Sojo believes his thought process is correct and strives to never give this self-indulgence up till death do him part, the enchanted blade will reward Sojo regardless of morality, as the blades are merely extensions of their unique wielder's essence, a theory that is only all but confirmed outright when discovering an enchanted blade's contract involves the sacrifice of that wielder's sorcery in exchange for a lifetime spiritual connection with the sword, and is only further reinforced by the quote-unquote true realm, a state of mind reached through 100% synchronization between a wielder and their enchanted blade, resulting in the enchanted blade evolving and changing to better suit the unique wielder's needs at the time. Because the blades take on the different qualities and aura of their individual users, not only does that mean every wielder of a specific individual blade can develop completely different abilities, the potential of each wielder is only determined by that person's hunger, their appetite to grow and keep reaching for their dreams. As such, this limitless growth will take the shape of whatever said wielder requires at the time. As seen with Chihiro, his first personalized technique from the true realm is Kuro Chigiri, an alteration of Enten's original Kuro ability, where instead of releasing singular wide black slashes, Chihiro can spread out up to 20 goldfish familiars that will eventually burst into smaller, more condensed slashes. Meanwhile, Sojo's first dive into the true realm is seen in his battle against the elite Kamunabi sorcerer force. When Sojo separated from Cloud Gouger and unable to touch it physically, his devout connection to the sword and his strong belief it would allow him to become his best self awoke a spark of electricity in the enchanted blade that could be harnessed within Sojo even if the two were apart, allowing Sojo to cloak himself in Mei, the lightning surge ability of Cloud Gouger that massively buffed Sojo's speed and attack power, letting him effortlessly cleave through the anti-Sojo squad with that newfound strength. The enchanted blade's capability of synchronizing with their wielders and adapting to their desires, while beneficial in the hands of protagonists like Chihiro, can be absolutely terrifying in villains like Sojo. And even now, currently in the story with new wielders like Hirohiko, who has nothing but the sky as his limit, because they can mirror any philosophy, it's no surprise that enchanted blade power has been long sought after by both factions, the Kamunabi and the Hoshaku. Just holding an enchanted blade can apparently be addicting, as we see even a more good-natured wielder like Aruha Yoji admit he didn't want to give up his own sword Kumayori when the time came, claiming the feeling of being a wielder during the war was intoxicating, and developing a fascination over Rokuhira in general as a result. However, there are wielders like Somura Seiichi who see the enchanted blades as nothing more than what Sojo sees them as, death-dealing weapons of mass destruction. And while Somura sees the great evil the enchanted blades can cause, witnessing firsthand the atrocities covered up by the Kamunabi during the Seitei War, and never wanting to see anything like that reach the light of day again, Sojo represents the other side of the coin, as someone that wants to accelerate that darkness as quickly as possible, and also put themselves at the absolute top of all of it. In fact, we even hear Sojo verbatim say his ultimate goal isn't ruling the country or something childish like that. It's simply to surpass Rokuhira. The truth is, though, there will always be those who try to stop the cycle of violence and those who seek to carry it on. Even Sojo himself is a product of traumatic abuse, a possible reason the crime lord seeks to cope by overindulging in power. When facing a sorcerer who can immobilize people with illusions of their most gruesome memories, we see Sojo get transported back in time to a scene of grisly horror. Surrounded by blood-stained flowers, a young child-age Sojo looks up at the hundreds of corpses hanging above him, the dripping blood and viscera falling all around the young Sojo, floating limbs and even heads just right out of the child's reach. Although this haunting sight doesn't faze Sojo in the slightest, it's safe to say it might be the catalyst to more than one of Sojo's psychopathic tendencies. Potentially even his fascination with Rokuhira, who Sojo admits to researching and reading all he could find about even long before Cloud Gouger got into his possession. The most powerful and horrifying of the 6 original enchanted blades is the Shinuchi, or the Magatsumi. With the country's celebration of the enchanted blade wielders as heroes of the Seitei War, and Kunoshige Rokuhira's fierce personality and sense of justice, it's easy to see how people like Aruha and Chihiro would be able to see the good in what these weapons can bring. However, However, it only takes one time to witness the atrocities that can be brought forth by the Magatsumi to question everything they've ever been taught about the enchanted blades. Something we even see from Rokuhira's own son Chihiro after seeing it in action during the Rakuzachi, when it was unleashed by Kyora Sazanami and used to wrought despicable injuries to the unlucky participants of the auction that were unable to escape in time, conjuring plant life within the bodies of the afflicted and amassing oozing black liquids that could easily cleave through the earth itself. The body horror was hard to stomach, and this was only a sliver of its power brought out by a proxy user. Who knows the catastrophic deeds the Sword Saint of Magatsumi can release on his own accord? Whether this is the reason Somura Seiichi himself deemed the enchanted blades as an unforgivable evil, or if it's even the cause of that slaughter shown to Sojo when he was forced to relive his past. As of now, the only thing we really do know, and question we can ask, was the Shinuchi something Rokuhira purposefully designed? And if it was, why did he feel the need to create something so horrible? And if that wasn't its original form, what kind of dream was the Sword Saint chasing to transform the Shinuchi through the true realm into such an abomination? One thing is for certain, there isn't any particular or singular way to view Kunishige Rokuhira's work, because if the theory about Sojo witnessing the Shinuchi is true, Somura and Sojo came to completely different conclusions after seeing the terrible death that could be wrought about from the enchanted blades. But the fact that everyone is able to look at something differently doesn't make that view invalid. A lesson that Chihiro eventually stops refusing to learn at his and Sojo's final confrontation, where while the two swordsmen battle to the death in a mental realm, they dine at the same table and break bread together, symbolizing their acceptance of each other's views, while simultaneously acknowledging neither of them will be able to move on from this confrontation without proving their sense of self is correct over the others. War isn't a battle of good or evil sometimes. Not everything is so childish. Just as there are multiple ways to make use of and evolve the enchanted blades, there is nuance to every single person's view on life. The only way to prove one's worth and one's belief is to conquer another's, and the blades given to those chosen hold the exact power that they need to do just that. By accepting Sojo's belief that Cloud Gouger was created to kill as a valid opinion, Chihiro has no choice but to prove Sojo wrong. For if Chihiro truly believes that the blades were meant to protect the weak and defeat evil, Chihiro must prove beyond any reasonable doubt with his own two hands that his belief is stronger than Sojo's. By slaying Sojo with Enten in this final 12-second struggle, Chihiro succeeds in cementing his father's will and his own into reality, rejecting Sojo's bloodlust, not as a concept, but as truth. Sojo's loss reveals the immaturity hidden beneath all that violence, the childish and ignorant belief that with ultimate power, one can shortcut themselves to victory and be freed from harm. Instead of taking the time to truly understand Rokuhira, take in as many opinions as possible, and come to his own conclusion, Sojo imposed his own twisted worldview onto Rokuhira, born from the need to become an even darker presence than the one that stole everything from him when he was a child, surrounding himself with weapons as a crime lord in the underworld, and refusing to see any other perspective, calling those who change weak for being willing to see things any other way. Sojo was projecting his fear onto others and protecting himself with power that was never his own to do so, exerting the Hishaku's greater influence to control the underworld with an iron fist, and even abusing Cloud Gouger to perform actions he never would have been able to do without the blade. With having all that limitless potential to evolve Cloud Gouger naturally, Sojo still sought out to cheat with Datenseki crystals, a shortcut to power that required Sojo to torture an innocent mother and daughter, spinning that wheel of violence from his high tower, just crushing those who were underneath without a second thought. Exactly how it almost crushed Sojo as a child long ago, eventually becoming the very evil that led Sojo down this path in the first place. And ironically, this is what set Sojo up for that failure. By succumbing to the Datenseki crystals, instant gratification, and rejecting his own natural growth and connection with Cloud Gouger, Sojo betrayed his very own philosophy, tossing away his innate potential in favor of quick results. And it's even sadder when you consider in Sojo's final moments, he could have maybe survived had he not wasted his final breaths attempting to exploit that incomplete Datenseki experiment. The ultimate power Sojo once believed he deserved, eventually bubbling up within and being the linchpin that pulled his explosion. That strength Sojo chased for for so long being his downfall, all because he wouldn't take the time to develop his body so he could be ready to withstand the weight of its burden. The loss of Sojo is heavy, not because as an audience we feel bad for him, but because it feels like his death came way too soon. That limitless potential could have taken Sojo to insane heights later on in Kagurabachi's story. In the Rakuzachi arc alone, Chihiro's growth with the remaining specs of Cloud Gouger, as well as his own Enchanted Blade Enten, is impeccable, making the true realm of a wielder where a blade bends to their user's will as their connection deepens more and more apparently true the longer Chihiro synchronizes with his sword. Having Sojo undergo a development arc in the background with no Cloud Gouger, learning similar lessons to Chihiro, and eventually being reintroduced to the plot as a fully awakened wielder that regains Cloud Gouger and either acts as an anti-hero or other rival for Chihiro to grow alongside. However, it does appear Hirohiko, the youngest, newest member of the Hishaku and newest wielder of the Enchanted Blade Kumayori, will be filling that rivalry spot though. Much more deservedly so, with Hirohiko being the same age as Chihiro and just as green, whereas Sojo was like a 30-year-old crime lord beefing with a teenager. Their dynamic was still very satisfying, and Sojo acts as the perfect introduction to the world of Kagurabachi and its nuanced views on duty and war. Sojo's death opens up the space for characters like Hirohiko to be Chihiro's true philosophy foil, something we might already be seeing occurring in their relationship. So if anything, Sojo walked so Hirohiko could run, and I look forward to seeing Chihiro bash his philosophy against as many other Enchanted Blade wielders as possible before the end of this series. Thank you for watching if you made it this far into the video, and make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed, so I know you want more long-form Kagurabachi content. Comment down below what you liked about Sojo or what you want to see next on the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my weekly Kagurabachi reviews. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.